Welcome to the Human Together podcast at the Ali Center in Louisville, Kentucky. And I am honored to be with Jeanie Kahnke from the Ali Center. I will start off asking, what is your role here at the Ali Center?
My role at the Ali Center, and first of all, thank you for having me. It's really an honor to be able to share some information about Muhammad and his legacy and the center. I am the Senior Director of Public Relations and External Affairs. So in that role, I oversee, the PR strategies, the marketing, leveraging partnerships to create events and opportunities. I was actually on the startup here for the center, so I'm starting my 18th year here.
2005?
Now, yes, we opened in November of 2005. I was at the center almost 4 years before we opened, so was very fortunate enough and blessed to be able to be part of that group which came up with the ideas and how this museum should tell the story of Muhammad Ali's iconic life. I had the opportunity to read a lot about Muhammad and understand his life, his, beginnings here in Louisville and how he emerged into one of the most famous people in the world.
And I'm assuming you got the opportunity to meet him on several occasions?
I've met Muhammad many, many times over the years. He visited the center often. He was very happy to be here. He would just pop in a lot of times unannounced, and he loved watching the films within our exhibits and watching himself fight, and he just loved it. Unfortunately, within minutes, like everyone in our museum just knew Muhammad Ali. I don't know how word can spread that fast, but it does. And then, of course he would, at first it was autographs in the early days, and then in the later days when everybody got their smartphones, he would pose for pictures. And just that in itself, though, was really rejuvenation for Muhammad. He years ago when FFA was here and Muhammad was invited to be on the stage as a surprise, he didn't even know, he said he didn't even know if kids would recognize him. And of course, and it took place at the same venue where Skills USA is taking place. Mm-hmm. It was like everybody knew Muhammad, and it was just like this cheer of, he was a very humble man, was always surprised that people recognized him. And that was part of his gift, that he never let fame get to him. He was kind of like the name of your podcast here, Human Together. He was a person who brought together all humans, and he was accepted by all cultures, and he was just a great uniter and brought people together. And that's one of the beautiful things about his legacy. And at the Ali Center, we get to tell his story and to share what he did in his life and why he had such impact.
That's amazing. One thing that I want to touch on before we start our full conversation is the architect here at the building. This is an amazing facility, and it's kind of unique where you start the tour at the top of the building and you work your way down. Tell us a little bit about the architecture and the thoughts going into that.
Yeah, so we had a couple different architects working on it. Our primary architect was Beyer Blinder Bell out of New York City. Some of their interesting concepts were, I think part of it, number one, is you want to come into a welcoming space. And we just renovated our lobby in 2018, and so it's still a very welcoming place. It has, as you know, it has a lot of light when you come in. It has an architectural feature, which you can see from the outside, this big copper dome-like feature.
Yes.
And that is actually symbolic of the Olympic torch that Muhammad carried in 1996. Oh, wow. You also see from afar, like from the highway across the Belvedere, you'll notice that there are colorful mosaics on the outside of our building.
I did notice those.
When you are far away, you'll see that there are actually images of Muhammad Ali that come out of that mosaic that's visible, like when you're driving down Interstate 64 and all of a sudden, whoa, there's a building and there's Muhammad Ali all around. It's very, very special that they, developed this concept for the building. There's also at the 5th and 6th floors, like toward the top level of our center's building, there's a window that faces the Ohio River and provides visitors a wonderful view of the 2nd Street Bridge, which I'm sure we'll get into that story a little bit later in our interview. A very, very important bridge in Muhammad's life. But the windows, the way the glass is sort of at an angle, and it was developed to be like a butterfly wing, like reaching across the Ohio River into Indiana, which is right across the river, and then sort of reaching out to the rest of humanity. It's at an angle, and there's sort of a wing-like feature on the roof over the building.
Wow, that symbolism is really neat.
Yeah.
And I know the symbol of the butterfly is real prevalent at the museum. You want to say a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, Muhammad had a very famous quote, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and so we actually use both of those in our branding elements. So
Yeah.
you do see a lot of butterflies.
I love it.
And of course it fits with Muhammad too, because a caterpillar morphs into a butterfly. So there's a very transformative message there, which is the Ali Center is all about, transformation.
I'd like to structure our conversation today in two parts. The first focusing on Muhammad Ali as the person, and then some things that you do here at the museum. So I'll start with, I think the unique thing about Muhammad Ali is he transcends sports. It looked at social justice and those types of things, and an amazing figure. And I kind of want to look at 3 points in his life that shaped who he is. And the first one was after he won the 1960 Olympics and got the gold medal in Rome, and he came back here to Louisville, and they had celebrations. And yet, poignant part of that was he was refused to eat at restaurants. And so I thought it's kind of hard to imagine now. How do you think that shaped his points of view and tackled social issues?
That was a transformational moment. Yes, it was Rome 1960. Imagine a young person, he was 18 at the time. He had trained, he had, everything. Going to the Olympics was, everything he had hoped for and worked for. He was just a very hard worker, very dedicated to achieving a goal. And he won. He got a gold medal for his country. And it was his first time overseas, and he was just on a high and was so proud, and thought that if he comes back to his hometown of Louisville in 1960, civil rights time, things would somehow change, at least a little bit. So he went down to a restaurant, and in our exhibits you may have seen the cafe, which is representing, what had happened. He asked for a burger or whatever, and he was greeted, with someone working at the restaurant saying, "No, we don't serve your kind, get out." And it was just, imagine that. I mean, think about that as you say today. It's just hard to imagine. So Muhammad had to leave, and he, as the legend goes, Muhammad went to the 2nd Street Bridge, which we can see from our building right here,
yes.
And he thrust his gold medal into the Ohio River because it meant nothing. And so, did he or didn't he really do it? No one really knows. Sometimes in interviews he has said that he did, and other times he said he didn't. Sometimes he says he lost it. No one in his family knows for sure. I really believe that Muhammad knew what he was doing, because it would be something for the media to talk about for years and years to come. Mm-hmm. And you know what? When it comes down to it, it doesn't really matter whether he did or not, because the symbolism is so strong and so powerful, and will live on, because that's just not okay. And I'm very sorry for Muhammad that he didn't get the full endorsements and welcome home and that athletes get today when they come back from the Olympics. He was a trailblazer, and he made a statement. Fortunately, things have changed now.
I watched a documentary recently about that episode, and he had, what I appreciated about Ali was his quick wit and his humor. And it was told that when he said, "Oh, we don't serve black people in here," he said, "That's okay, I don't plan on eating one." Yeah. So I just thought that was kind of funny.
He was funny. He had a great sense of humor.
So the next era in his life could be, you could write volumes on it, was his transformation religiously to the Muslim faith and changing his name. What did that mean to Ali in his life? He had gone from Cassius Clay now to Muhammad Ali, and it was for religious beliefs. So
right. It meant everything to him, and you might be referring to the new HBO documentary that's out called What's My Name?
Correct.
Yes. Just came out less than a month ago. It's very, very good. So if you imagine Cassius Clay living in Louisville, Kentucky, late, in the 50s and early 60s, and black people did not have equal rights. And all of a sudden, he hears about someone talking about a religion that was just, I think, more than a religion to him. It was just a way of life. It was a group where, they teaching clean living, spirituality, self-confidence. You could see why he would be drawn to something like that. And so in 1964, his first championship, when he beat Sonny Liston, he was actually the heavyweight champion 3 times, and he was the first person to do that. When he beat Sonny Liston, a day or 2 after that, he came out and announced to the world that he had changed his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, because having a new name, having a new identity, it was a way to show that he was different inside as well as outside. He was a different person because now he was dedicated to a purpose that I don't think he could easily describe earlier. And so changing his name to Muhammad Ali, converting to what was the time Nation of Islam, it opened up so many doors for him, not just externally, but inside his head. He always said that he used boxing as a platform to do his social justice work, and he didn't waste any time in doing that at all. He emerged as Muhammad Ali and became known as the greatest of all time.
I think one of the things that was brought out in that documentary that I watched, that when he changed his name to Muhammad Ali, there were people in the black community that didn't accept that and that wanted to call his old name and all that. There was some hesitancy to that acceptance of that name, but for him it was more not just the name, it was a representation of his beliefs.
And a way of living.
Yeah.
And a way of living. Yeah, there were at the time, it was, the media called it Black Islam or something like that. And a lot of black people at the time, they thought he was, what are you doing? And he was just to know Muhammad was, part of his personality was he was just extremely self-confident. I think some people thought he was, they just didn't know what he had gotten into. It was very non-traditional for especially someone from Louisville, Kentucky. And then, he had so many changes occurring in his life within just a couple years. He goes from Olympic gold medalist to heavyweight champion of the world to name change to, all of these changes. So I think, people looked at him with kind of like, what is he doing now?
Yeah, it's like, what is this, a phase or is he moving on? But it really, it wasn't a phase. That was who he was.
It wasn't a phase at all. I mean, and he was Sunni Muslim for many, many years and was a devout and deeply spiritual individual. And the beauty of Muhammad Ali, and you'll see it in our exhibits, we have an exhibit called Spirituality. He embraced all religions. It didn't matter to him. He has a beautiful quote that's on the wall of Spirituality that says, rivers, ponds, lakes, streams, they all contain water and they all contain truth. It's a beautiful message. And he had friends of every religion and he treated everyone the same, and that was his progression into his faith and name change.
One of the images that stood out to me, because I'm of the Catholic faith, that he was doing a protest and he was arm in arms with a nun, and so that was kind of neat.
I like that too.
To see that. One of the last phases of his life, and this was impactful for me, in 1996 when he carried the torch for the Olympics that were in Atlanta, and I remember distinctly being moved by that, because you really didn't know. He had been diagnosed 12 years earlier with Parkinson's, but you never really saw him in public, and so you didn't really know what that was about. And so it was, to me, that was like the turning point in his later life, and it gave him, a different direction and a different movement to speak about. So what can you tell us about?
He wasn't so much a spokesperson for Parkinson's as opposed to being an inspiration to people who have Parkinson's and other diseases.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, during the years between his diagnosis of having Parkinson's to the 1996 Olympics, which was really kind of a coming out for him in a way, because if you imagine yourself in Muhammad Ali's shoes, when he's the heavyweight champion for so many years, and everybody knows who he is. He's physically beautiful, he's in shape, he's confident, he's funny, he's smart, and all of a sudden he is stricken, like so many people are, with a debilitating disease. He probably at one point felt, I'm not the same person anymore, but he built up his courage and strength when he was asked to carry the torch at the 1996 Olympics. You could see the delight of the audience, and 4.5 billion people watched that on TV. And you can hear even the wonder when Bob Costas says, Janet Evans is running with the torch, and all of a sudden Muhammad Ali appears on stage, and you can hear Bob Costas say, and look who gets it now. And the whole stadium just erupted with Ali, like he's back, our champion is back. They embraced him so much in such a big way, and I think that seeing him out there with the courage, he was shaking a little bit then, and he was doing it. And over the years we've gotten so many emails and stories and face to face, I can't tell you what, from a soldier in Iraq saying, what carried me through all of the fear of being over there, I had a picture of Muhammad Ali on my tent. Or, person who was, dying of cancer. I figured if Muhammad Ali can go through this disease and this cycle of his life, I can too. There was something, that was one of Muhammad Ali's special gifts, gave people inspiration for many reasons. For one, the living through civil rights and overcoming that. He never went to college. He was very, very bright, but he wasn't the best student, but I think he was just ahead of his time in many, many ways. There's inspiration to be learned by that. Like, he can overcome the ethnic and economic divide of his hometown, and then he can overcome wins and losses as a heavyweight champion, all the things he went through with his stand against the war, and then living with Parkinsons. And then, he was an artist too.
Wow.
And a poet and a magician. He would come here and do magic tricks, so there were so many interesting, diverse sides of his personality. Like, he was one of a kind. And part of the mission of the center, of course, is our staff works very hard to preserve and share his legacy, to tell his stories, to take people through our exhibits, to learn about his life, his 6 core principles of confidence, conviction, dedication, respect, giving, and spirituality, so that they can use that and figure out, what can I do? How can I achieve my personal greatness, even though I might not achieve the same heights as Muhammad Ali, but then, how many people do? But you can be personally great in your own community. You can be a personally great father, family member, or, citizen of your state or your country. So that's the beauty of Muhammad Ali. And, we call these transformational moments. I don't know if you saw that in the exhibits. Did you see the red twin bike?
Yes, I did. It was a
Well, did you read about it?
I did.
Okay. Well, can I share the red bike
Absolutely,
story? Okay,
absolutely.
So this is how Muhammad Ali started to box. He was 12 years old. He had gotten a new red twin bike from his parents as a gift, and he rode his new bicycle to what was called a Louisville home show at the time. It had cotton candy and chips and games, and, he parked his new bike outside, and of course, how many people had a bike lock in the 50s? Not many people. They didn't steal like they do now. So he came out and his bicycle was stolen. And of course, he's 12 years old. He thought he was going to get into trouble with his parents, and he was crying. And so he was like, I'm looking for a police officer. He found an officer in the building named Joe Martin, Sergeant Joe Martin. And Muhammad said, I've got to find whoever stole my bike, and I'm going to whoop him. And he said, no, you better learn how to protect yourself before you go whooping anybody. You got to protect yourself. He goes, I run a boxing gym downstairs. Why don't you come? I'll teach you how to box. So Muhammad showed up. We don't know if it was a day later, a week later, but it was very soon. So we call that moment where you could take the left road or the right road, the fork in the road. Muhammad chose to show up and learn how to box, which of course changed the course of his whole life.
Absolutely.
If he hadn't shown up, he could have stayed Cassius Clay, living in Louisville, Kentucky. I love Louisville, Kentucky, but he would not have been the global citizen that he became. At the time, it was the 50s, early 60s, it was harder to find a job, harder to get an equal education. Civil rights was still going on, and it was just a very turbulent time in our history. And so Muhammad took that road, and if he hadn't done it, who knows where he would have been. So we call that a red bike moment.
Yeah. You're at a crossroads. Well, you said this earlier, that Muhammad Ali was a multifaceted, multi-layered person, and I think the center does a great, awesome job of representing that, because the center exists not just within these four walls. And as I was doing some research, I looked at some of your outreach efforts, and one of them came to my own home state, where you sponsored Dwight Howard, an NBA player who came to a youth correctional center. You had even your CEO, Donald Lasser, came out to Oklahoma to speak to these students and these incarcerated young youths, and how to turn around their lives and kind of be an inspiration. And that was one of your outreach efforts that I thought was neat, because it involved my own home state. What are some other outreach efforts that go beyond the center here in Louisville?
Sure. Well, I have to start with our Muhammad Ali Center Council of Students. This is a diverse group of high school kids from the region, what we call Kentuckiana, Kentucky and Indiana. These students come together very often, and they learn about Muhammad's 6 core principles, and they learn service and leadership skills. 100% of them have gone to college since we've been tracking, and it's a life changer for them. We also have a program called U Crew, which is also for youth, and it's an opportunity for students to learn about social entrepreneurship. So many of them, of course, go on and develop their own products, and they learn, the value of creating something and having an economic impact to go with that. We also have a character education program, which has been outbound several times, and it also teaches young people about Muhammad's 6 core principles and how to incorporate them into one's life and community. One of our, educational initiatives is gender equality. So I don't know if you saw the photo exhibit that we have right now. Actually, it's on this floor. I'll show it to you. We do an annual exhibit called Shining a Light, and it shines a light on women. And each year there's a different theme. So like last year we focused on female refugees. This year it's on female homelessness. Next year it'll be the 100-year anniversary of women being able to vote. So actually right now there's an open call for submissions for photographs, and so we like to make it as diverse as possible. And then through social media, so Shining a Light launches every year on March 8th, which is International Women's Day. We did a lot of social media on the issues of homeless women. Like, it's not just a problem in Louisville, Kentucky, or, it's everywhere. It's across the United States. It's everywhere. And so that's one way that we help raise awareness of the issue. We partnered with local homeless organizations so that we get information out to our visitors, both online and on site, on what to do when they run into a homeless person. What is the right thing to do? Do you give them money? Do you, bring them food? What do you do? So we have tools that will educate people on what to do, educate people on why so many people are homeless. It's not because they're addicts or they all have psychological problems. A lot of it is just stuff happens in one's life, and all of a sudden, as you know, your whole savings can be just alleviated within a couple months if something happens, if there's a house fire, whatever. And so people need help in getting back on their feet. We also partner with WEB Du Bois School, Du Bois Academy here. Again, we use the character education program. We partner with We Day Kentucky. You may have heard about We Days. It spread to many different cities. It was started in Canada, and it's a big event with celebrities, music, inspiring talk, and other entertainment. But the way that you get in is you have to do so much service work. So it's an initiative that's really growing around the country. So we partner with that. We partnered with an organization called Generation Wow, and this was about 400 young teenagers from underserved populations who came into the center and got to hear inspiring speakers. And so when they go home, they have, some skills, leadership, confidence, that sort of thing.
That sounds amazing. I wasn't too familiar with that. I have to look into
yeah,
that. That
very,
sounds really amazing.
It's very good. And then, of course, we have a Daughters of Greatness breakfast series, which every other month we bring in a speaker who talks about social justice issues. We have a great following for that. We have an annual Humanitarian Awards ceremony. And maybe someday we could talk about how to get some of your students to attend, whether it was through some contest or something. We're getting ready. It's every September. It takes place in Louisville. And we honor 6 young people around the world, literally, from Malaysia to India to different parts of Africa, all over Europe to Canada, Colombia. These young adults are chosen for their humanitarian work, and we give an award to each of these that mirrors one of Muhammad's 6 core principles. And some of these young people are so amazing that you leave the award ceremony going, what have I done with my life? They're just absolutely amazing, starting their own foundations, working on everything from environmental issues to medical issues to coming up with, new inventions for this or that, being in dangerous parts of the world. They're just amazing. And then we also give awards to the more seasoned humanitarians, sometimes celebrities, sometimes people, it depends on the year. Seasoned awardees who are all doing such good work, and it's so inspiring.
That's amazing. We'll definitely have to keep the relationship going, and ironically, that's what brought me to Louisville. Is I had students that were in a competition where they were talking about a community action project that they did. They helped local veterans center, and they're presenting about that. It's kind of neat that came to the Ollie Center, and I was with my students here earlier, that some of the things that they value and some of the things that they presented about are really at the core principles that you teach and put forth here at the center. One of the things I was going to ask you about, you've mentioned that the 6 core principles: respect, confidence, conviction, dedication, spirituality, and giving. Do you have some curriculum that's developed called Creating Our Future?
Yes, that is a character education.
Or how do people access that?
We would have to put you in touch with our education department.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not something that you can just be emailed, or so it's a whole program with one of our, we do have teach the teacher opportunities.
That would be great.
I think it would be really awesome, especially, I think there's some great alignments with Skills USA and the Ollie Center, it seems to be, especially the service element.
Yes. Well, and I see some alignments there, because Skills USA, beyond the skills that they teach, welding and automotive and all that, it's a very high character leadership organization, so some of those things would definitely align with that curriculum. You mentioned the Humanitarian Award. Tell me a little bit about that. Who have been some of the recipients of that?
Sure. This is our 7th. It was developed as a way, Muhammad Ali has gotten so many awards in his lifetime, and so he was actually able to attend the first 3, 2013, 14, and 15. I think he really enjoyed sitting in the audience and watching people get awards instead of him, but the beauty of it was that these awards were in his name, his principles. And so it is the Ollie Center's major fundraiser for the year. It's a gala, and the awards ceremony, dinner, red carpet, the whole deal. But some of the seasoned awardees are recognizable names like President Carter, Susan Sarandon, Gina Davis, Christina Aguilera, Michael Bolt, Lou Gossett, Jim Brown, Amy Carlson, Hill Harper, just, a diverse group of well-known people who are using their fame, if you will, similarly to what Muhammad Ali did. They're giving back. They're using it as a platform. And so, while the 6 core principle winners, the ones under 30 years old and under, are really the stars, they turn out to be the stars of the program, because people don't expect the inspiration that fills the room. Seasoned celebrity winners are also just so incredibly inspiring. There were many of the awardees, the young people who stick out over the years, but there was one in particular, I believe she was the youngest ever nominated. She was a 13-year-old woman from Pakistan. So she was actually 14 when she received her award, but she came with her uncle, and she's fighting against child marriage and fighting for education for girls in her country. I mean, the courage and commitment and dedication that
But there
takes.
probably wasn't a dry eye in the house, was there, after she
Oh
presented?
no, I
That's
mean,
amazing.
and all the stories are so different, and the issues, the social issues that they're fighting for are also different, and it just really brings the message home, and that the next generation, they got it. They're going to take care of this earth, and they're going to take care of our fellow humans. And animals.
Yes.
And environment. I
things.
think we're really in good hands with, this generation of young people.
I will leave you with this last question. It's kind of all-encompassing. What do you think the legacy of Muhammad Ali, how does that live through the museum? How are you charged with continuing that legacy through the museum and all the programs that you have?
Well, first and foremost, everything we do here, whether it's our temporary exhibits, our permanent exhibits, our partnerships, our educational programs, our public events, they all revolve around Muhammad's principles. There are so many elements of his life, as we talked about, the fighter outside of the ring, for social justice, the fighter of Parkinson's disease, the humanitarian, the artist, the poet, the global icon, the, Louisvillian hometown boy whose circle of life began here in Louisville and it ended in Louisville too. He wanted to be, forever resting in his hometown of Louisville, Kentucky, which he was so proud of, and ironically he's buried in the same cemetery as Colonel Sanders. So two of the most famous people are forever tied, will ever be in Louisville, Kentucky. As I said, all of our programs, everything we do is preserving and sharing his legacy through, as I mentioned, exhibits, partners. We also have an oral history program ongoing. We take donations for our archives. We partner on film projects. We're a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and, we're here to be a source of inspiration and knowledge.
I think you're doing some amazing things, not just within the walls of the center, but outside. I think speaks to the strength of not only what you guys do, but represents Ali's. I've been blown away. This is my second time to visit the museum, and every time I get something new out of it, and it's an honor to bring some of my students, because it opens their eyes, because they lived in a generation where none of this existed. Appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today, and I look forward and I encourage everyone to visit the center here in Louisville, Kentucky. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I've really enjoyed it. Good luck.
All right, thank you.
And good luck to everyone, especially you Skills USA kids doing the service projects. I think it's just awesome, and Muhammad Ali would be so proud of you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. The lessons learned through the life of Muhammad Ali are certainly inspiring. It's encouraging to see the life that he left and the legacy he provided lives on through the Ali Center. Throughout the building and through the programs that have been created through the center, there are numerous lessons that help us all become human together.